Martin Brundle has never been a man to waste words, so when he called Lewis Hamilton's Monza performance a shocking shift, the entire Formula One world sat up. This wasn't just a casual remark about a driver looking more comfortable in a car. Brundle hinted at something deeper, a game-changing mindset that could reshape Hamilton's Ferrari story and maybe even the 2025 season itself. For months, Ferrari's dream signing had looked frustrated, caught in a car that refused to dance to his rhythm. Yet at Monza, something cracked open, a Ferrari bombshell, as some are calling it, because the seven-time world champion didn't just finish a race, he signalled the start of a new chapter. What Brundle saw wasn't only speed on the stopwatch, it was a change in Hamilton himself, a reinvention that could tilt the balance of power across the entire grid. Brundle's words carried weight, because if there is one thing that has defined Hamilton's career, it is his ability to adapt. Time and time again, he has proven that when conditions turn against him, he finds a way to bend them back in his favour. At Mercedes, he built a reputation for tyre mastery, stretching stints longer than anyone thought possible and turning strategy into a weapon. In Brazil, during those unforgettable wet weather drives, he showed that when the track turned slippery and chaotic, he could rise above the rest with a level of control few have ever matched. Adaptation has always been his superpower, but with Ferrari's SF25, that gift seemed to hit a wall. The car demanded a style that felt unnatural, refusing to bend to his usual rhythm. For the first half of the season, it looked like even Hamilton's greatest strength was being tested to its very limit, as if the SF25 itself was challenging him to rewrite the way he drives. The SF25 was never an easy beast to tame. It demanded later braking than Hamilton was comfortable with, a sharper rotation point right in the middle of the corner, and an operating window so narrow that the smallest mistake in steering could cost him precious time. The car's balance felt alien, and the margins it allowed were brutally thin. For a driver used to moulding machines to his will, this Ferrari seemed to fight him at every turn. The frustration was clear in his radio messages, where impatience and disbelief often broke through. The stopwatch told the same story, with lap time deficits to Leclerc that were impossible to ignore. Each weekend, it seemed like Hamilton was wrestling a car that punished him for every attempt to impose his style, and the more he pushed, the more the gap widened. For a champion built on adaptation, the SF25 became a puzzle that refused to be solved, and it began to test not just his driving, but also his patience. Then came Monza, the place where everything seemed to change. Martin Brundle called it a mindset adjustment, but what really happened went deeper than psychology. Hamilton stopped trying to bend the SF25 into his style and instead began meeting the car on its own terms. It was no longer about forcing the machine to obey, but about unlocking what it wanted to give. The stopwatch revealed the shift. His gap to Leclerc narrowed to around 0.2 of a second per lap, a delta swing that suddenly kept him in striking range rather than slipping back into traffic. Even more telling was the tyre wear. Earlier in the season, Hamilton's stints would fall away too quickly, but at Monza, the degradation was far lower, allowing him to stay within critical undercut windows and keep DRS pressure on the cars ahead. These were not fireworks on the podium, but the kind of subtle adjustments that change entire strategies. What Brundle noticed was not just a calmer Hamilton, but a driver recalibrating himself to fit the razor-thin margins of Ferrari's machine, and the results spoke louder than any radio message ever could. Brundle's remark was not only about driving, it also touched on the politics inside Ferrari. For most of the season, the imbalance had been obvious. Charles Leclerc dominated on Saturdays, pulling out qualifying laps that put him near the front, while Hamilton often found himself buried in the midfield, forced to fight through traffic on Sundays. That split distorted Ferrari's entire campaign, with one car collecting podiums and the other struggling just to limit the damage. But Monza suggested something different. By accepting the quirks of the SF25, Hamilton reduced the friction that had been building inside the team. Instead of frustrated radio calls or body language that hinted at division, there was unity, a sense that both drivers could finally work in tandem. Brundle's words hinted at exactly that, a political shift that could change Ferrari's season. He had seen before how dangerous internal battles can be, most famously during Hamilton's civil war with Nico Rosberg at Mercedes, where every strategy call carried double meaning and every race became a fight inside the garage as much as on the track. Ferrari know they cannot afford that kind of split. Monza showed a glimpse of peace, and for a team chasing McLaren and Mercedes, that unity might be their most powerful weapon. The real difference at Monza was not just Hamilton's calmness, but the strategic door it opened for Ferrari. With his race pace now close to Leclerc's, The team finally had the chance to run dual strategies instead of relying on a single car to carry the fight. For the first time all season, Hamilton's consistency kept him inside the crucial undercut window, which meant Ferrari had real leverage on pit stop timing and tyre choices. A gap of 0.2 per lap may sound small, but in Formula One it transforms everything. When a driver is losing half a second every lap, the only option is defensive racing, trying to hold ground and hope for luck. But losing just 0.2 allows a driver to stay in DRS range, apply constant pressure and force rivals into mistakes. That is exactly what Hamilton managed at Monza. Suddenly, Ferrari were not just reacting, they were attacking. Instead of looking like a one-man army, they could finally play Red Bull's two-car game, working in unison, rather than sending one gladiator into battle alone. It was a subtle shift, but one that changed the way Ferrari could think about every race that followed. What makes this turning point even more powerful is how familiar it feels when looking back at Hamilton's career. In 2009 with McLaren, he began the season in a car that was almost a second off the pace and spent the early races sliding around, visibly frustrated. But as the months went on, he stopped fighting the car's flaws and started accepting what it could offer. By Hungary, he was back on the top step of the podium, proof that his patience and adaptability could turn a bad situation into victory. The same story unfolded in 2013 when he joined Mercedes. At first, the car felt built around Nico Rosberg, and Hamilton struggled to find confidence in the braking zones. Yet by mid-season, he had adapted his style, carrying speed where the car allowed, and in doing so, he laid the groundwork for the hybrid-era dominance that followed. The pattern is clear. Once Hamilton accepts the limitations of a car, he finds ways to transform its weaknesses into strengths. That is why Brundle's observation at Monza carries so much weight. He has seen these inflection points before, and each time they mark the start of a new chapter in Hamilton's story. The numbers make the story even clearer. Before the summer break, Hamilton's average qualifying gap to Leclerc was around 42 hundredths of a second. Since Zandvoort, that deficit has shrunk to just 18 hundredths. Across a 60-lap race, that difference adds up to 6 to 8 seconds. And in Formula One, that margin can be the difference between being trapped in a DRS train or having the freedom to attack. This shift matters even more when you look at the championship fight. Ferrari are locked in a tight battle, with McLaren sitting 34 points ahead and Mercedes only 18 points behind. In that context, every finishing position counts. If Hamilton's improved pace allows him to move up even one spot each weekend, say from 6th to 5th or from 8th to 7th, over 9 races that swing could be worth 20 points or more. Those points are not just numbers on a sheet, they mean millions in prize money and the difference between finishing 2nd or 4th in the constructors' standings. Monza showed that Hamilton's progress is not only about personal pride, it could reshape Ferrari's entire season. At Monza, the change was not just on the stopwatch. It was written all over Hamilton's body language. Gone was the heavy walk and clipped interviews that had followed him through the first half of the season. Instead, he looked relaxed, composed, even sharing jokes with Leclerc in the paddock. That shift did not go unnoticed. In Formula One, perception is its own kind of currency. Sponsors pay attention to whether a team projects confidence or chaos, and the FIA often treats stable outfits more leniently when it comes to grey areas of regulation. Rivals also read those signals. Andrea Stella at McLaren admitted that Ferrari are always dangerous when Hamilton is settled, while Toto Wolff at Mercedes remarked that he looked at home again, a line that sounded less like a compliment and more like a warning. What the world saw at Monza was not just a driver adapting, but a political force rebuilding his capital. A confident Hamilton sends a message to the entire grid that Ferrari are no longer fragile. They are adjusting, and that perception alone can tilt the balance of power. All of this becomes even more important with the regulation reset of 2026 fast approaching. Ferrari cannot afford to walk into such a massive change divided. In seasons like these, trust inside the team is as valuable as raw speed, and Hamilton's adaptability gives the engineers confidence that his feedback can guide the car in the right direction. It is not the first time he has been in this position. Back in 2013 at Mercedes, his ability to adapt and refine his style helped shape the philosophy that led to years of dominance in the hybrid era. Now, Ferrari face a similar crossroads. If the unity seen at Monza holds, they could build the kind of foundation that once fueled Michael Schumacher's dynasty. But if Hamilton and Leclerc drift into rivalry, the story could collapse into something more like the Fernando Alonso years. where speed was never enough to overcome political fracture. The stakes are not just about the next race. They are about Ferrari's entire future. A sixth-place finish at Monza might not seem like headline material for a seven-time world champion, but the way it happened could mark the true beginning of Hamilton's Ferrari story. What Martin Brundle noticed was not just a casual observation. It may be the first breadcrumb of a long-awaited Ferrari renaissance. The calm drive through traffic, the patience with tyre management, the unity with the team, all of it hinted at something bigger than a single result. It felt like the moment Hamilton stopped being a frustrated newcomer and started becoming a builder, someone who could shape Ferrari's future as much as he races for their present. And that leaves the question hanging over the paddock. Was Monza just a fleeting mindset shift? Or are we witnessing the birth of Hamilton as the architect of Ferrari's revival?